Sprechen Sie Deutsch, Fräulein. Welcome to Babylon Berlin Babble, here at Double P Media as we tackle the Netflix drama Babylon Berlin. Today we're going to be covering Season 1, Episode 1 and 2. If you haven't jumped in and watched the show and are listening to this podcast, the beginning discussion will be spoiler-free, but then later in the episode we'll jump into the first and second episodes. Know that we won't spoil any further past that, even though we'll desperately want to because the twists and turns are so crazy and tragic. Joining me this week is someone with no German heritage, and that's my buddy Catfish. Catfish, how you doing?
I am doing wunderbar today, Baba, wunderbar. You know, I am half German and half French-Canadian, so I like to say I know how to make love and war.
Oh, man, that's going to be very helpful.
I'm so disappointed. I'm waiting for your groan, Bubba.
I don't know the German word for groan, but it's coming.
Just keep repeating, Scheiße.
Also joining us is somebody who, let's be honest, takes odd political stances like he doesn't like Nazis. It's Double M, Matt Murdoch. Matt, how you doing?
Double M? Yeah, that's me. Guys, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate this fun, especially because of the education I'm going to get as to how to pronounce all of these darn names.
Yes, that's right, Double P podcast listeners. We are covering another Netflix show in German. Welcome subtitles, our friend. And why are we covering it? Well, a couple years ago, back in 2018, at the beginning of the year, Dark was a real popular show, and it was blooming on Netflix, this German show. And TV critic Alan Sepinwall wrote that he couldn't get into Dark. And I thought, what's with this moron? He can't get into Dark? And he said instead he found a different Netflix German show entitled Babylon Berlin. He binged all 16 episodes, the first and second season at the time. He raved about it. I got into it. And now I am forcing my two buddies to enjoy it as well. So that's how I was introduced to it. It has similarities because it's a hard-boiled noir, similarities with Chinatown and L.A. Confidential. These are two stories where at the beginning of the stories in both these great movies, Chinatown and L.A. Confidential, a lot of disparate things are happening and you're like, what's going on? And as things begin to unravel yet also come together, you see how the different plots pull together. That's going to happen here in Babylon Berlin. And if you've happened to watch these first two episodes, you may be thinking, what the hell is going on? Let me ask my buddies. Matt, were you able to understand anything that was happening in these first two episodes?
I recognized the same person when I saw them. I wasn't sure if I knew their name or not. But no, it was pretty confusing. I love how even in the first two episodes you start to see how things weave together a little bit, but it takes a while, really, for all this to sink in.
Catfish, how are you doing with this mess of many dozens of characters and dozens of political alliances and German? How are you doing?
It's entertaining enough. It's beautiful. There are a lot of different things going on, but I mean, even now I'm like, well, the drug-addicted cop, he's looking for a movie. I'm not sure who's in that movie, why he's looking for it. I'm not sure why the guy who is a gangster and maybe or maybe not fed a dude's brother's tongue to him, why he didn't want that to come out, or though he's involved in it somehow. There's the whole political thing going on. You know, the guy hiding in it reminds me about another great movie I saw on Netflix, Headhunters. And can I just make a plea to people? Yeah. I never want to see anybody hiding in the business end of an outhouse again. Okay? That's now twice, and that is too many. The visuals of it are beautiful. I do appreciate the nudity and the kinkiness of it. I mean, if we're going to have Germans and they're going to do weird stuff, we might as well make it sexual. To me, the least interesting part of the whole thing is whatever's going on with the politics of it. And the guys with the train, it's completely confusing to me, and I don't really care about it right now. I don't know. The rest of it I care about, and I want to know more.
Well, let me point out, we're not going to spoil past these first two episodes, but when I watched Babylon Berlin back in 2018, I had no idea, especially these first two episodes, what in the world was going on. But like Catfish and Double M have said, it is beautiful to look at. Would you believe, gentlemen, that this is the most expensive television show, not in English, ever produced?
Actually, I would, and here's why. Because a lot is shot on location. You know, there has to be a lot of reproduction of things to make it seem authentic, and everything. You know, my thing is music. Everything down to the music is very authentic. It feels authentic. So,
one other little kind of description, if somehow you haven't watched these first 2 episodes yet, I'll give you as far as the series flow as a whole. If you watched the classic HBO show The Wire would each season kind of have a big overriding storyline. In the very first season, it was about the coroner and the drug dealers at the high-rises. Then the second season was about the troubadours, the dock workers. Then season 4 was about the school kids. Babylon Berlin is going to work the same way in that the first 2 seasons cover one overarching story, which is this train car mystery. And those go over the first 16 episodes. But problems introduced in these first 16 continue into season 3, where we have a new overriding story of the movie set. So if you're familiar with the show The Wire, it'll be somewhat similar to that, but a bit quicker paced, possibly just as confusing. The final thing I would say is if you're familiar with the big, huge international hit Game of Thrones, where very early on in the very first episode, the show informed viewers, winter is coming. Okay, winter is coming. It's coming. This show doesn't have to inform you. If you know history, Hitler is coming. And so it takes place in Berlin, 1929, and we're just a few years away from Hitler rising to total power. And it's a backdrop which is going to taint everything. And just like The Wire would occasionally have seasons where there'd be some positives and some negatives, we're going to be dealing with the exact same problem because Hitler, unlike Inglourious Bastards, this isn't going to rewrite history. Hitler is coming. Catfish, you had some thoughts.
You did, in a reversal of roles, you have been trying to get me to watch this show for a while, talking about how good it is. And I'm not sort of one of these, like, I don't like to read Philistines. I've been watching foreign movies for a long, long time. For the longest time, Toshiro Mifune was my favorite actor because of his performances in movies like Yojimbo and Seven Samurai. But there's something about, I think in the last few years, on my voracious hunt for content, I have been exposing myself more and more to foreign shows on Netflix. And they're all varieties. There's this delicious, like, teen scandal, murder, sex, drugs that I think is from Brazil called Elite.
Oh, yes.
That I'm deliciously watching. I've been watching a lot of Nordic depression noir. The latest one I'm watching is called Trapped. I love it anywhere. Like, there's snow and death and everything like that. So all that is being said is I really have watching something called Duty, Shame, Giri Haji. That's a Japanese show on Netflix. So all that is to say is that I am thrilled and more open to watching foreign shows, even with the subtitles on Netflix. So as I watched these first 2 episodes, and I'd watched the first episode a few years ago when you told me about it, I was like, all right, I wasn't impelled to watch more. But I'm all in now. So if there's one good thing that I think Netflix has done is, besides letting people have an excuse to have sex,
Netflix and chill, baby.
is exposed us to these great, not just great, but also sleazy. Not this show, but again this show Elite. Ms. Catfish watches Cable Girls, which is like a kind of a telenovela set in the 40s. I just think that people don't talk enough about how Netflix has broadened the world to people. And so I'm far more excited to watch this now. I'm like, hell yeah, give me 30 episodes.
How about you, Double M? You watch any foreign shows? Are you doing okay? Are you watching dubbed or subtitled?
Actually, I watch everything with subtitles. Part of it just so that I don't miss any bit of dialogue or whatever. One thing that I do find somewhat confusing or even annoying sometimes is that in a foreign thing where they've done English voiceovers, First of all, it doesn't seem like there's all of but 5 actors doing the voiceovers sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And secondly, I think sometimes the actors are encouraged to do the dialogue the same so it matches with the lip movement a little bit. But at the same time, you get these subtitles where the words are out of order or whatever, and sometimes I have to really, really concentrate just to make sure that I'm hearing what I'm hearing. I don't mean to make myself, well, I do mean to make myself sound stupid, but that's the way it works for me. I find it kind of annoying a little bit, but I do enjoy seeing other countries' art, and this show is certainly fantastic. So just 2 days ago, Bubba, you asked me to look into the musical number that we're going to be talking about, and I started this series and could not stop. I've already finished one season. I haven't finished all of it. I mean, all of the series yet, but I can't stop, and thank goodness it's my spring break week, because otherwise I'd have to cancel. I'd have to skip school to finish this thing.
Listeners, if you've watched these first 2 episodes and been confused, if you've watched the whole thing, tweet at us. You can reach us at DoublePHQ. That's the word double, the single letter P, the letters HQ for headquarters, at DoublePHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/DoublePHQ.
Bubba, let me quick question now. I would always say, always go for subtitles, just simply because the actors usually aren't as good, and it just kind of takes me completely out of it. Mm-hmm. But for Dark, did you not watch one of the seasons with the dubbing?
Right, that's a great point. So when I first watched Dark, the other big popular German Netflix show, I watched it with subtitles. And that's a show where it's as confusing as this, but possibly just a little bit more. So I would always find myself pausing.
Are you telling me this is going to be as complex as Dark? Because Dark, I mean, wow.
Yeah, check the Double P podcast archive to find our coverage on Dark. But then for the second season, because I was always sick of pausing and taking notes, I did watch it dubbed, and I found it was actually okay. I know subtitles are always better, but for Dark being so confusing, I thought, let's just let it play out. I thought as a test, I would start watching Season 3 of Babylon Berlin with the dubbed version, and couldn't even make it 10 minutes because the acting for our heroine, Charlotte Ritter, was so tough that I had to stop and start over again. I'm now completely for Babylon Berlin on subtitles only.
You know, the other thing, Bubba, that about the subtitles, it's funny. I'm just as hard to for things to grab my focus as the youngins who are notoriously on multiple screens.
Right.
So I find myself anytime I am watching something on Netflix, sadly, I am on another screen. Right. And so the great thing about these foreign shows is that they force me to get off my other screen. Otherwise, I'm going to miss something. And I actually find that to be a benefit now, because otherwise I cannot force myself to get off a second screen.
Oh, man. You millennials, Catfish, are so crazy.
Yeah, I wish I was a millennial.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
All right, listeners, we are going to jump into these first 2 episodes. If you haven't checked them out, I promise you, if you like Chinatown, if you like The Wire, if you like LA Confidential, if you like hard-boiled noir with plucky heroines and flawed hero detectives, you're going to love it. Pause the podcast, go watch them. For everybody else, let's dive right in. And I'll say let's dive right in, and the show dives right in on the most confusing cold open ever. So, sure enough, the cold open shows a character we later find out is Dr. Schmidt, a hypnotist, psychiatrist, nut job, for lack of a better word, from my opinion, is speaking to our hero, Commissar/Detective Garion Rath. And we see flashes of a bunch of scenes that we're going to see across the next 16 episodes. But because it's our very first intro to the series, it doesn't make any sense at all at the cold open. So
Thank you.
If you want to just skip the cold open or take it in as like an idea of a hypnotic, this is what we're going to see, fine. Otherwise, let's just...
Well, I just want to rate these first 2 episodes, and I want to give it 9 double T's.
Wait, double T?
Trembling theremins. Look, folks, I mean, if you're in 1928, or 1929, and the band you've got playing in your dining area, not on the big stage, but in your dining area, has a theremin, you say, wow, how did they afford that? Because that thing had just been patented in 1928.
The Armenian, he gets it done, people.
He's got some cash.
I will also give it 9 mutinous people in the muck. double M.
Oh, wow. Who knew? I am going to go ahead and rate this a bit lower because I think these first 2 episodes are really confusing. It's hard to get thrown into the world like this. So I'm only going to give these first 2 8, what I like to call double N's.
Oh, double
N's?
No Nazis. Where are the Nazis? I'll drop one final spoiler, people, and that is, well, if you finish this 16-episode journey of the train car, I'll tell you something. If you didn't hate Nazis before, you will hate Nazis.
Oh, gee, what a shame. I'm so sad that my positive opinion of Nazis is going to get shaken.
We need to unstraighten you, Catfish. We need to unstraighten you.
Yeah, please.
Skip right to our location. We are in Berlin, 1929, and I'll throw it out to both you guys. Catfish, because you're of German descent, I'll go to you first. What did you guys know of the history of any of this? Once again, I watched it not knowing really any of the history of Germany between the world wars. How about you? What did you know about this time?
I knew that they were suffering. Obviously, the suffering is sort of what led to Hitler. And I haven't checked, so you can know that if I am wrong, why I am so dead wrong. But I thought Hitler... I think that he is around now, but he doesn't really start really getting powerful until like 1933. Again, I don't know why that's in my mind. But in other words, I kind of feel like, think of him now around this time as maybe like a junior senator, that kind of thing, comparing to in the United States, where he's out there, he's got some ideas, but he has like none of the power. So that is my history lesson, which could be completely wrong.
You're going to get A's on your tests, everybody. How about you, Double M? What did you know about this time period between the world wars?
Well, as a person who's a big Peter Jackson fan, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
the way that he rails against the horrors of World War I, which ended in 1919, and the Treaty of Versailles that happened after that, I have a huge interest in this, and that's one of the things that I'm talking about makes this show seem so authentic, because you do have, as Catfish mentioned, a bunch of just really downtrodden people. They've been paying these ridiculous war reparations, and it was truly a horrific war, probably the most horrible war that was ever fought, World War I, even more so than World War II, in terms of its lack of humanity and what all happened to the people. So that even makes these things that we even get into in this first 2 episodes about how different people who you find out were in the service or not in the service, and how they react to other people who are having kinds of reactions to things. We're going to get into all of that here in a minute, but it just really painted a beautiful picture to me as to how accurate this is. These people, you say 1929, oh, the Great Depression. No, that's not why the German people they've had years and years and years of economic depression, which, like Catfish says, leads to the rise of Hitler. So it makes scenes like what Charlotte's going through or what her family, where they're at. It makes it all make sense a great deal.
Right. So here on Babylon Berlin Babble, we're going to have various segments which we call Wikipedia-level research. So here's some of the stuff. I watched this show without knowing any of it. I believe this could be helpful, so you'll enjoy it even if you don't know this stuff. But I'm going to go ahead and read certain things as we discuss the episode, just so we could all understand what's happening in history. As World War I drew to a close, the support for Kaiser Wilhelm II, a.k.a. the King of Germany, collapsed. And near the end of the war, the military was pretty much running a military dictatorship. In 1918, an anti-monarchist November Revolution broke out, the Kaiser abdicated his throne, and a left-leaning provisional government filled the vacuum. That led to an uprising by the Communist Party of Germany, which tried to overthrow the left-leaning government, which in turn unleashed the pro-monarchist army and the right-wing Free Corps. And they crushed the communist uprising there in Germany. And this begins the Weimar Republic, as it's known, as kind of Hitler promoted it and called it the Weimar Republic as a way to diss it. And it was this republic that surrendered and signed the Treaty of Versailles, which really put a limit on how many forces the German military could have and what kind of weapons they could have. Because as Double M mentioned, this was World War I was chemical warfare. It was disgusting, and it leads to a lot of people being messed up, including our lead hero, Detective Rath. We're going to break these 2 episodes up into kind of the 3 main storylines, and this will be a bit of a spoiler for Catfish, who wasn't quite sure. But the first storyline we're going to focus on is on Rath, and it's the hunt for the photos or negatives to end the blackmail of the mayor of Cologne.
Okay, so I am completely fine with being made fun of for not seeing obvious things. But can you tell me where I missed the key that it had exactly to do with the mayor? Where it is explicitly stated that it's about the mayor? I mean, I know he's interested, but...
No, it is Catfish. You kind of have to add a bunch of different sentences together, a bunch of different scenes together to get this. We'll go over all those scenes in a second, but real quickly, I want to talk about our lead hero and get your guys' opinion on him. So, Detective Rath, he seems to suffer what we would now call PTSD from his experience in the First World War. He's got these shakes, and he's addicted to these little shots of serum, which history tells us probably included heroin. Good job there, Rath. He's moved to Berlin. He's been there about 4 weeks. And once again, if you combine certain statements and scenes from the second episode, you can probably put it together that he's been sent there from Cologne to capture the negatives and stop the blackmail of the mayor. So what do you guys think of our incredibly addicted, flawed hero, Detective Rath? What do you think, Double M?
Well, I love the fact that he is not necessarily flawed, but vulnerable. And you don't see that kind of vulnerability in the guy who's, when you think of a copper, you think of a guy that's kind of more like Wolter, the guy that's just kind of going in and smashing mouths and getting things done. And not that there's that much to like about Wolter in these first 2 episodes either, but I really appreciate Rath's vulnerability. I really appreciate the fact that he is kind of carrying this around behind the back of everybody else. He's on a special mission. It's great.
How about you, Catfish? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I like him. I mean, his partner is great. I mean, if you wanted to be like German crooked detective that beats up suspects, I mean, that guy is like cast perfectly. As far as our guy, it's funny. I didn't automatically assume that he had been affected by nerve agents. Just that, again, that he was having some emotional issues, and just that the shakes are kind of made worse when he is not having his delicious heroin cocktail. Also, for a guy who is not doing so well, he can certainly dance. And I mean, I was like, oh man, he's going for it. And then when he did the thing off the wall, I was like, what is going on here?
All those contestants before an episode of So You Think You Can Dance, they take a little shot of heroin just to...
I like him. I mean, at this point, we don't quite know what's going on with the girl that I think he wanted to marry. My sense is, and again, this would be good because not only do I not know, but it's sometimes there are things I don't know even when I see them. But it kind of feels like the girl he was interested in was maybe his brother's wife, who maybe his brother died in the war. I don't know. I'm getting those kind of feelings.
Well, that's very good. We can't go any further, but I love where your head is pointed. Yeah, he gets a letter from Helga, and she mentions that her son, Moritz, misses him. And so, yeah, there's obviously something more going on with that. Just to kind of take through his beginning steps. So he's up in Berlin from Cologne trying to bust this ring of people blackmailing the mayor of Cologne before an upcoming election. And so he's been placed in the vice squad. his vice team breaks into this porn ring, led by this guy named Koenig, who, R.I.P. Koenig in episode 2. His partner, who you guys have talked about, Bruno Wolter, is the perfect definition of a crooked cop. They go into the porn ring, he sees some money lying around, he takes it and pockets it as evidence. Then later, one thing that's interesting to think about, a suspect runs away. Sure enough, the suspect is a former cop himself named Franz, who quit the force because he had the shakes, as Wolter describes him, possibly exactly what Rath is suffering from. And so Franz almost shoots Rath, but Wolter stops him. Then Wolter pockets Franz's gun. And what's funny to know in history is at this time there were incredibly tight gun control in Germany. So he took the money and he's taken this gun. Wolter is the perfect definition, if not later when he beats up Koenig, the perfect definition of a crooked cop. But he's Rath's partner, and thank goodness he's our partner then, not.
He is not a very good cop, I think, simply because he's driving around with a guy who's got more baggage under his eyes than there is in that entire train that is coming slowly to Berlin. I mean, if he's talking about all those shakers and the guy next to him, it's clearly messed up.
All right, so we have to branch out from this bust of the porn ring. Koenig has been arrested and beaten up. Franz, the former cop, they let go. Franz goes to a place I can only call a hypnotherapy/therapy/cult place and sees Dr. Schmidt. And then he tells Dr. Schmidt about, these pictures have been taken. And Dr. Schmidt was like, I wanted them destroyed. And so then evil Dr. Schmidt goes to see a gangster who, for simplicity's sake, we'll call the Armenian. He's the guy with the beard outside his restaurant and nightclub. And Schmidt tells the Armenian, Koenig has been blackmailing the mayor of Cologne without their knowledge, apparently. So the Armenian, the gangster, goes and tells his muscle, who's dressed as a priest, to visit Koenig. Long story short, Koenig realizes, I got to get out of this, grabs Detective Rath's gun, and blows his head off. Guys, R.I.P. Koenig. Any thoughts?
Well, I'm not really missing Koenig for what he was doing. I have to say that first. He's not a person that we're really going to miss. At the same time, I love that you brought this up, because what is it that the Armenian must be holding over Koenig himself to where Koenig would choose death over taking his chances with being secured in jail or what have you? How is it that just this priest just comes in and says, the god of revenge appears, and all of a sudden Koenig, his first plan is first to jump out that window. That's why he's trying to get Rath to open it up. And then when he sees the gun, finds the easy way.
I know.
It still feels like the easier way would be to shoot someone else.
That would be the easiest way. Catfish.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I guess he realizes there's something that Koenig must have been protecting. I don't know, because he was willing to sacrifice himself for this. So, or maybe he just was really realizing that the Armenian was going to take him apart in pieces, and he'd rather get it all over with at once.
Or he was worried that the Armenian would feed him something.
Yeah.
This takes a little tongue. Right, yuck. So Koenig shooting himself seems to bring on Detective Rath's PTSD. He runs and collapses in the bathrooms, where he runs into, again, our plucky heroine, Charlotte Ritter, who discovers his addiction, helps him out, theoretically saves him. And Rath, somehow, even though he peed himself, the second character to pee themselves in 2 episodes, is able to pull himself together once he gets that sweet, sweet white lightning.
It's so delicious.
Now, because the suspect has killed himself in custody, Wolter and Rath are brought in to the political police chief, Benda. And it's to Benda, once Benda sends Wolter away, that Detective Rath gives this guy the ghost that, hey, I haven't found the film yet. I'm still searching for it. I'll find it. Rath needs to be put up in a place to stay because his hotel is overbooked from all the union members coming in for an upcoming May Day rally. And so Wolter sets him up at a lady named Miss Elizabeth's place. And what room is he going to be staying in? He's going to be staying in an old room from another character called Karakov. And also in that place is a left-leaning journalist named Kettelbach.
Now, Bubba, I just have a quick question for you. You know, I'm going to ask a lot of questions to determine whether I saw things correctly. When she said a room just opened up, it was my impression that the guy didn't know that he was leaving that room.
Right. Now, as we get to his side of the story, it's possible that he thought, okay, that my train has come in literally and I can just leave, even my suitcase behind. But it's also possible that Miss Elizabeth thought, here's a more consistent guy who's going to pay rent. Karakov, you're out. Yeah, that was hilarious.
Musicians, you never want them renting your place, man.
Right.
Never.
Exactly. We end up Detective Rath's storyline in the first 2 episodes where Franz, the former cop who almost shot him, has pointed Rath in the direction of a woman he recognizes in the photo, and Rath believes this photo, which has had one of the people's image scraped out of it, he believes that's the photo of the mayor of Cologne. And Rath then, in a final bit of comedy, he goes to pay for his drugs at the drugstore, and he seems to be paying with them not with money, but with dirty pictures. And, of course, one of the photos that fell in was Charlotte Ritter's photos of the crime scenes and the pharmacist that killed his buzz from the naughty photos.
Yeah, but what was also nice was even the initial introduction when the meet cute between the homicide photos and the porn photos, our hero wasn't concerned at all for the daintiness
right.
of our heroine. He's like, yeah, no, don't worry about it. Yep, this is...
Have at it. Is it a selling point that we get to see murder photos and old-timey porn? Double M, what are your thoughts on it?
It's an odd mix, but, you know, it probably wouldn't even faze most Germans, right? At that time. No, I'm just kidding. No, seriously, though. Yeah, I love how they paid off the fact that they bumped together and was having to sort through each other's pictures in that way. That was a good comical way to pay that off.
All right, so now we're going to move into the overarching storyline of these first 16 episodes, and that's the train car story. And this one really was confusing on first watch. Just go with it. We'll explain it a bit more in detail, but it's slightly crazy. It's not a train robbery. It opens instead with them taking over a train so they can attach a new car to it. They kill the engineers. Let's just pause right there. Who are the people who did this? Based on everything that happens later on in the next 2 episodes, it seems to be what I like to call, with my terrible knowledge, communists, but communist followers of Trotsky. Does that seem right, everybody?
Sure, why not?
It would appear that way, yes.
All right, so these, exiles of Russia, they're communists, but they weren't following Stalin. They were following Trotsky's way. They attach this car and take it over, and then the next day the train gets stopped. And here's where it starts to get very peculiar and even more confusing. Major General Siegers, who's obviously part of the German army, pulls up to the train depot and demands that the train be allowed into Germany. Why would a train that seemingly has been taken over by these Trotsky communists, why would the German army allow that in? You're like, what is going on? Even, to be honest, even the Trotsky communists are a bit like, are we going to have to shoot our way out of this? What's going on? But they get into Germany, and then they put a cable out to their partners, who seem to be the musicians, Kardakov, who we already mentioned, who used to have a room at Miss Elizabeth's, and his woman, Svetlana. So are we all in agreement on that's what happened? I'm going to always go to you, Catfish. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, they've got a train that's going to do something that's very positive for them. Why, I don't know.
Okay, now this, admittedly, I don't really consider it a spoiler, but this next bit, I want to say, because it's going to come up in the future episodes, and as an American, this was just hard for me to get my head around, so we're going to have to go back to Wikipedia research on this time in the world. And why is it hard for me to understand? Well, we're in the United States. We had a revolution where we overthrew the king, we're kicked him out, Britain, get out of here, we want to be our own independent country. What is happening at this time in Germany is that a good number of Germans, including most of the military, want to overthrow the republic and put the king, a.k.a. the Kaiser, back in charge. So why is this? So if you are a monarchist, you supported the Kaiser, or you're in the military, which was always under the Kaiser, or you're on the extreme right. Who signed that terrible, awful Treaty of Versailles, which bankrupt our company? The left-leaning government. Who stabbed the German army in the back, it's called? Who's known as the November criminals for surrendering? Sure enough, it is the left-leaning Republic democracy. And so, as we're going to see as this show goes on, not only do we have these communists going around, but we've also got people who hate free elections and democracy and republic. So that's a little hint. At the Trotsky Communist headquarters there in Berlin, which is this print shop, Kardakov, this musician, comes in and he tells everybody, hey, the train is through, and these communists celebrate until the end of episode 2. Now, we should point out that Kardakov and his lady, Svetlana, who they're both musicians, she's a singer, where they're at the club run by the Armenian, the gangster with the beard. And so we're beginning to already see hints of how all these storylines are going to come together. Everything's good. The train's going to come in. When what happens? Svetlana, in disguise with a fake mustache and a fake wig, goes to the Russian embassy and tells the Stalin commies the whereabouts of the Trotsky commies. And sure enough, episode 2 ends with the Stalinists killing all the Trotsky people except Kardakov, who is hiding in Catfish's least favorite place. Mm-hmm. Now, Catfish, I'm going to come back to you because you said this was the storyline you care the least about. What does it need? Why is it down on your list?
Well, I mean, maybe here's the thing. We know what's going on with our heroine. She's in kind of dire straits. She wants to be a young, happy person, so she's partly that, but also doing whatever she can to make money for her family. They're in dire straits. Our hero, we feel bad for him. Times are tough, and he's got to navigate trying to get this film back without anyone knowing, even his Snoopy partner.
Right.
And so their things are very clear. But as you've just described to me in mind-numbing, and I mean that literally, my mind is numb. I don't understand who I'm supposed to be rooting for, what the stakes are really. This whole thing, I mean, obviously it's important for this show to make sense in Germany. They have all this background, maybe, but I just don't know. I don't know what's really going on here, so it's hard for me to care.
Okay, well, how about you, Double M? We know that Svetlana has betrayed her man, her lover, Karakov, and everybody, and gotten them killed, theoretically, because she wants the train car for herself. How are you feeling about this storyline?
Well, see, I actually find this intriguing because I do find the whole, especially, remember, Stalin just came in 28. So this is just a year after him coming in, right? And because of that and the atrocities that he was already trying to do, clearing out the old house, this Trotsky guy is in, we get the Istanbul part on this episode, right? Where the
That's where the car was going to go, yeah.
Yeah. So that's where he is. So we know that this car that was attached is meant for him. And I love the idea that somebody is trying to fuel a rebellion through afar or from afar and trying to get Trotsky going.
This is why it's good that I didn't jump ahead. In as far as we are in episode 2, he needs a heavy duty bath, and he hasn't gone anywhere. The last we see of him in this episode is in the crapper.
True enough. But we're talking about Trotsky here, who is already in Istanbul.
Oh, sorry.
Which we knew, if you're a history buff, then you know that that's where he had isolated himself in fear of Stalin in an effort to rise himself up. That's why I think historical context is really important to get this episode really good. But you can't have a rebellion story without having a double agent, right? And I love Svetlana for being a double agent. That's one of those things that just makes me, I mean, in this case, and it's not clear at this point why she's turned to a double agent. I think we'll have to explore that as we go further along. But at this point, it's like, oh, yeah, nice twist. Plus, it makes her undressing at the Moka Efti taking her disguise off that much more fun with the musical numbers going on.
Oh, yeah.
Now, let me ask you something, Double M. Is your favorite kind of agent a double agent or a triple agent? That's my favorite kind of. I love the triple agent.
See, I'm a musician. I don't do waltz time all that much anymore. So two counts all I can handle.
All right.
Well, let's dive into our third storyline. Catfish, you were just referring to it. And that is Charlotte Ritter's tough life. She is living in the slums. She's got it rough. She's been out all night. Her little sister, Tony, notices a bruise on her neck. The Ritter household is a mess. Her older sister is married to a jerk and seemingly can't work because she's got to take care of her daughter. Her grandpa is on death's door. Her mom is telling her, hey, we need 20 marks or they're going to kick us out of this crappy apartment. And even her little sister, her cute little sister, is skipping school so she can work at the mill and make some of those mark bills, y'all. What are your opinions, and let's go to you first, Double M. What are your opinions of our plucky heroine, Charlotte Lot Ritter?
Can you imagine being a woman at that time period where there's so much chauvinism anyway, and then trying to use whatever you can in order to make enough money, basically because you just love one little sister, right? Not so much that you love the whole rest of your family, but just to make sure that she's okay. I mean, that's a compelling human story to me in itself. And the methods that she uses are desperate. And that to me seems very appealing as well, just in terms of making me interested in her as a character.
How about you, Catfish? How do you feel about Charlotte?
I feel like it's sad in this way. That, like, there's obviously, as you see from the club and everything, there's money around in Germany at this time. Right? And so the fact is that she has to supplement her dominatrix income with secretary work. It really feels like, I mean, if you can't make it as a dominatrix, like, life is tough.
That is very tough when you're a sex worker down in the dungeon. It's pretty tough.
Right. Okay, you can whip me, but how fast can you type?
I just want to know when she sleeps. I mean, she doesn't seem to sleep at all.
It would be tough, too. She's got to make those marks. How about this? She has to beg for work. She's among this giant group of women at what they call the Red Castle, this big brick building where the police headquarters is, begging for work to do anything. And she almost doesn't get it until Graf, who's a crime scene photographer, chooses her for cataloging photos of crimes. And she's theoretically doing it for somebody they call the Buddha, who is a real-life person who is named Gnat, who was the chief of homicide at the time in Berlin. But Charlotte is tough. She doesn't mind these photos. She's willing to do it to get those mark bills, y'all.
Yeah, it's just sad. I mean, it's just sad. I would hope she would make enough whipping dudes, but apparently that's not the case. Now, you brought up an interesting thing here. I do like this other, it just sort of feels like an aside, but it's kind of interesting that here they are in 1920s Germany, and they're like, hey, you know what would be a good idea? Let's try and catalog crimes so we can figure out similarities, maybe to hunt people down. I don't know whether that was actually part of what was going on then, but it's kind of an interesting aside that I noted.
Yeah, I like the catchphrase too.
So, as you guys have talked about, Charlotte is a modern girl, a flapper. This is the roaring 20s, yet to make ends meet, she has to go to the Armenians' nightclub and be a dominatrix. But before that, she at least gets a chance to dance, and we see young police detective Yannick has a crush on her, can barely ask her to dance. He tells his friend, and his friend makes a move. Nice going, wingman.
Yeah, I was gonna say when you were watching that, Bubba, did anything seem familiar to you?
Yeah, I'm like a good friend.
Huh. All right, well, listen, if that's how you remember it. So, yeah, he tries to take over. Another thing is, when do these people have time to learn these very complex dances?
Well, let's get to it. So, way back when I'm first watching this show, and I'm seeing these first two episodes, and I'm so confused. I haven't even done the infamous Wikipedia research that I've mentioned so far. I'm going along, and then suddenly a frigging giant musical number breaks out, and I am blown away. I'm like, holy smokes, this is incredible. Svetlana, she may be a double agent, but that lady has some pipes. She comes out in her, I just went to the Russian embassy outfit, and does this incredible dance number, which I was just blown away by.
I mean, maybe I was just because of what it was, I was over thinking this, but to me, it kind of felt a little bit. It was musical and entertaining, but it was also kind of Brechtian. Was the thing that I thought.
Go deeper on that. Yeah, what do you mean?
Well, it's just like the three-penny opera. That it's sort of, if you've ever seen any Brecht, it's musical, but also kind of has that. It's like oddly musical. And so that's kind of the feeling that I got from it.
Yeah, the fact that everybody knew the dance, you know this one, the dance that seemingly we only do in sync during an incredible drum solo.
Right. Well, that one was different, but also a little bit creepy and obviously intentional was the people kind of raising their right hands all in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that part of the performance and one of the things that makes it compelling is the fact that you see that in its own way, this is a group of people who are regulars. They're looking to escape something, and they've been there so often that they're very familiar with this. This is like Neil Diamond coming out and singing Caroline, right? So it's one of those things where everybody knows it. They even know their little pre-electric slide line dances together. Mm-hmm. And the whole culture of it. And one of the things that makes it so appealing to me is the fact that they include audience response with the soundtrack. To me, it would have been much less effective if they'd have just dropped everything out and all you heard was the music, right? Even if you saw the visuals, the fact that you hear people, some of them in some things do the Staub with her. They're singing the words just the way that people do in a concert. And that made it feel much more real. The music itself is amazing in the fact that it's going to sound weird, but it's actually more authentic than you would think it was. Back in 1928, Django Reinhardt from Belgium had just been on his first recordings, and the opening of this particular piece, this Asche zu Staub, has a very gypsy jazz kind of sound to it. You've got the banjo doing rhythm against it, doing this counter rhythm against the main pulse of the beat. Mm-hmm. You have things hanging on a drone, and really all of that progresses through the verse until you get to the point where you get to like a chorus, like where the music really starts to expand and rise. And this was written by the director. He was one of the writers, Tom Tykwer. Him and Mario Kamian, and I'm going to butcher all these names, Nico Weiterman. They were all the ones who came up with this. And you even see throughout the rest of the series, and this is not really a spoiler, but if you watch the end credits, you see that Nico Weiterman and Mario Kamian get on-screen music credits, meaning that they were the guys that were either arranging or writing everything that was performed that you see on screen, as opposed to the regular guys who were just the writing of the music, like Johnny Klimek, I suppose. And then, of course, Tommy Tykwer was also writing some of the scored music. But this stuff is presented to be right in your face and to make you feel like you're part of that audience. And made it, despite my inability to ever recreate any of those dances, I wanted to go jump right along with Yannick and all of these guys. It was great.
Yeah, Matt, I have to go to you. That number one, that sounds like deeper than Wikipedia research, Matt. If you're going to impress us this much, we may have to go beyond Wikipedia. But I wanted you to talk about that drum solo, just because when it happened, when I first watched this, I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. How many songs of that period would have this incredible just period where, all right, drummer, take us on for the next 2 minutes? It was great.
Well, that is one of those things that was very characteristic of big bands throughout the world. And most of it came from probably the fact that Gene Krupa's band was very popular throughout the world, and records had spread, and drummers in Germany or in France or whatever would have heard that. And it was a very Gene Krupa type of solo. It had that kind of, and sorry for trying to imitate a drum set there, but
no, you did great.
It's that rhythm that Gene Krupa really established as part of the swing band drum solo that they were really going for. And I can imagine, I can't verify because I'm not a time traveler, but I can imagine you could go to just about any club anywhere in the world post 1924, and you would hear a drummer doing that at some point during the night.
Man, it is. I've also referred to this show as the pre-Nazi Great Gatsby. It's because of scenes like this. So great. Now, we should point out plot-wise, Svetlana, as we're finding out, has betrayed Karakov and the Trotsky commies, and she's got an admirer sitting up in the balcony watching her. And I don't mean the club owner, the Armenian. She's got this guy with this odd birthmark across his face. We'll meet him as the series goes on. His name is Neeson. And spoiler alert, everybody, there are still probably about 8 to 10 characters who are going to come in relatively soon to really make this even more confusing. But I promise it's all going to come together. And if you like these first 2 episodes, you're just going to love it. That's my thought to you. Catfish, did that scare you?
Oh, God. Blast it.
It's as easy as Game of Thrones, man. You don't have to read the books to get their names eventually. Just,
I should point out, like Game of Thrones, this is actually based on a book series by a German author who decided to write his hard-boiled noir set in the 1920s. Because I love the mystery of this train car section, I decided to read his novel, which Season 3 is based on. And I can tell you this, listeners, don't read the novel. It's like they got the general idea from the novel, but then they expand it out to be this incredibly, admittedly complex world that is just so much better and more rewarding than the novels are themselves. If you love the novels, once again, reach out to us at PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/PHQ. Catfish, you seem to be the only one of us who hasn't watched forward. What are your thoughts? Where do you think the story is going?
Well, I mean, I assume that, first of all, our, just because I know the way the world works, that our hero and heroine will kind of get together. They both know how to dance.
Yeah, they got that in common, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I am looking forward more to seeing. I mean, I wonder if our hero is going to be exposed, for his picadillos. Definitely, if he doesn't get his photos straight, he's going to run out of juice. It's the guy's not going to accept limbs for very long. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that it's beautiful. I don't mind more characters. That's fine with me. I'll take that.
Double M Matt Murdock, you've watched a bit ahead. Without giving any spoilers, how do you feel the next couple episodes go?
Let me tell you, once you started me down this rabbit hole, Bubba, I have been unable to stop. I love this show. So thank you for suggesting, once again, most of the time I live in oblivion to what's actually good on television. I instead watch CBS Access a lot. No offense to those who do. Anyway, I'm excited for your discoveries along with us, Catfish. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts as we go along.
Listeners, we want to hear from you. Once again, send us your impressions. Send us your thoughts at PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/PHQ. Now, one thing I'll go ahead and point out, when you do post-show recaps of Netflix shows, which all drop at once, and there are all these episodes, it's kind of sometimes hard to figure where exactly in the process we should do a new episode. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to cover all seasons in 2 chunks. So admittedly, we've only done 2 episodes. For the next time you hear our podcast, and please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, Podomatic, Google Podcasts.
Wherever you get your podcast.
Thank you. The next time we're going to be going over to the end of Season 1. As I've already kind of spoiled you guys, the story really takes the first 2 seasons to reach a resolution. But I really think if you enjoyed these first 2 episodes, they're going to rock your world and make you even more confused. So join us on the train as we go further into Babylon, Berlin. So every week here on Babylon, Berlin, Babble, we're going to nominate special awards for people who really came through. One award we're always going to give out on a podcast is our Detective Wolter of the Week. That means somebody who's scummy, on the take, and at the very least, he's going to, if you want somebody beat up, he'll have no problem doing it. Double M, do you have a Detective Wolter of the Week?
Well, now since you put it that way, I've got to go real world and talk about the entire U.S. Senate. So, there you go.
That probably could get nominated every week. We're also going to be giving out another special award, which I can't even pronounce well. Catfish, how do you pronounce the Scheisse Award?
Well, it's the Sweet Scheisse of the Week. But before I give that, I'm going to give my Wolter of the Week.
Okay.
My Wolter of the Week is the guy who breaks into the bathroom with women are in there and says, it's really hard for me to pee with this hard-on that I'm going to put right in your face.
Oh, Charlotte's brother-in-law.
Thanks a lot, dude. Appreciate it.
Well, do you have a Scheisse of the Week, then?
My Sweet Scheisse of the Week, sweet Scheisse, is going to be Charlotte in her dominatrix gear. I said to myself, very quietly, so that Ms. Catfish couldn't hear,
Oh, no.
Sweet Scheisse!
I would like to think that Kardikoff would be saying that as well, just to keep himself from puking.
All right. Any final thoughts, Catfish? Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I think it's great. I'm excited too. I'm glad that we'll be covering the rest of the season because, like Double M, I don't really want to hold off on watching it. But I thought, that I would do it so that I didn't know what was going on ahead.
Listeners, thank you so much for joining us. As I thank my guest, Double M, how can people reach you on social media?
The easiest way to reach me is at Musical Concepts on Twitter. You can always find a number of podcasts that I do at mattsaudioblog.com. Thanks for having me, guys.
Catfish?
You can hit me up at CJGman67.
And my name's Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM at Fit and Trim on Twitter. Please join us on this train to the road to Nazism on our social media accounts. That's at PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/PHQ. And as we say every week, we'll be babbling about Babylon Berlin next time on... I don't know how to end this. I'd forgotten we rated stuff. It's been a while since we've done a podcast.
Oh, my God. Scheisse! Good job, Matt, knowing the format better than Bubba.
Sorry, man. I didn't mean to call you out.
No, please. I couldn't think. I forgot. Oh, ratings, right. You know what? I was so deep in my Wikipedia research.
That'll do it to you.
We gotta have the repeating things. That was so good.
No, this is perfect.
Matt.
I will edit it in so it makes sense. I'm very tempted to edit our ratings up at the top where they're supposed to be, but I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
All right. Well, if you like Nazis, wait until Westworld starts.
Oh, spoiler!
Whoa.
Catfish has seen season 3, episode 1, a show which hundreds of thousands of people will watch. Where we'll be lucky if we get probably 200 downloads on this. But yeah,
Catfish.
Yes.
Do they give you all 4 of the episodes that they released to the press, or just the first one?
No. This is just a for your consideration event. So we just saw the first one, and then we got some sweet free food, and then we got some swag. But it is. Let me tell you something. It's probably maybe top 3 most expensive television episode ever made would be my guess.
Wow.
Like behind some of the Game of Thrones ones. I mean, they went to 5 different countries. It looks beautiful. They shot a lot of it in Singapore for the future. They were in Spain. What else were they? They went to it looks good.
how about this? Could you here we're talking about a show that's very confusing at the beginning. Westworld likes keeping you on, hey, what's going on? Could you understand it well enough, Catfish?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, they had the Q&A afterwards. They said a couple things I thought was, I don't know whether it's revisionist or real.